All addictions are substitutes for legitimate suffering. Carl Jung. A man wakes at dawn, swears he is done with the bottle, and pours it down the drain. Sunset finds him tilting a fresh glass to his lips. A woman deletes the app that steals her nights, then downloads it again before her pillow cools. Friends call it weak will, doctors call it chemistry, bosses call it poor choices, yet none of those labels explain the strange grip that drags them back. Addiction is not love for a drink, a pill, or a glowing screen. It is the silent hunger for relief, a moment when the noise inside finally goes quiet. For a heartbeat, the substance feels like mercy. Then the moment ends, and the ache returns louder than before. Willpower alone cannot break this spell, because the true craving is not physical, it is spiritual. Jung saw it clearly. When life tells us our pain is shameful, we bury that pain deep, and it begins to howl. The howl needs meaning, but we hand it a bottle instead. We feed it distraction and call it medicine. Tonight, we will follow that howl into the shadow, through the basement of the self, to the place where the real cure waits. The journey will not diagnose you, shame you, or hand you simple steps. It will name the missing piece, the legitimate suffering your soul has been begging you to feel. Once you see it, the bottle, the needle, the endless scroll will lose their masks. Stay with me, because by the end of this path you may never look at addiction, or at your own small escapes, the same way again. Society likes a tidy answer. Addiction is rotten chemistry or rotten character. End of story. We point at the bottle, the pill, the glowing screen, and forget the person gripping it is reaching for something painfully human: peace. Stand in the addict's shoes for one honest minute, and the object of desire changes shape. It is no longer poison. It is a life raft. When the sea inside you is rising fast, you grab whatever floats. Picture waking already exhausted, because the moment your eyes open, an invisible weight settles on your chest. You dress, smile, answer emails, yet every task feels like hauling buckets of sand across a desert. No one else can see the load, so they praise your productivity while your soul keeps whispering, "Something is wrong. Something is missing." You drown that voice in coffee, chatter, endless scrolling. But by afternoon, the whisper has become a siren only you can hear. You don't reach for the drink to feel good, you reach to hush the siren, to claim a breath of calm. Jung called that siren the cry of legitimate suffering, pain that asks to be faced, grieved, and understood. Modern life, however, teaches us to stay busy, stay pleasant, stay efficient, anything but honest. We exile our grief, chain our anger, bury our loneliness beneath schedules that never end, and then wonder why night feels endless. When the bottle offers 10 silent minutes, it feels like mercy. The price will come due later, but mercy is mercy, even when rented on cruel terms. Rented mercy soon hardens into secret ritual. You pour a drink not to celebrate but to survive. You open the betting app not for thrill, but for a fleeting breath of quiet. Ritual grows roots. It whispers, "I'm the only one who understands you." That is how substitutes become masters. They arrive as guests and leave as landlords, charging rent in dignity, health, money, time, whatever you treasure most. The world sees only unpaid bills and shaky hands. Jung saw the hidden landlord, unmet meaning, demanding interest. Here is the cruel twist. The more the substance robs you, the louder society shouts that you are weak, and the louder that accusation echoes inside your head. Shame piles atop pain until you can't tell them apart. You drink now not just for relief, but to forget the person you believe you have become. Critics say, just stop. They might as well tell a drowning man to just breathe. The water must recede before lungs can remember air. Discipline is a fine sword for bad habits, but addiction is fought deeper, in the catacombs of the spirit. Down there, brute force only drives the shadow further out of sight. Jung warned that whatever we repress returns with doubled strength. Swear off the bottle in anger tonight, and it will greet you tomorrow with a brighter smile and a stronger thirst. If force is not enough, what is? First, an honest naming of the void. Admit the craving hides a hunger for stillness, not spirits. Second, a willingness to feel the very suffering the bottle has been shielding you from. That sounds like punishment, yet it is the opposite. Real pain, faced consciously, hurts less than the phantom pain you chase around endless corners. Legitimate suffering opens a door, substitute suffering nails it shut, and so the stage is set. The substance stands revealed as a counterfeit savior. The siren still wails beneath the hush, and a deeper battle waits in the shadows of the self. That is where we go next. At first, the drink is a visitor you meet on weekends, the screen a late-night companion, the pill a secret shrug after work. The ritual feels harmless, almost civilized. You pour carefully, measure precisely, promise yourself you can stop whenever you like. But rituals are living things. Feed them attention, and they grow roots. Miss one appointment, and they sulk. Miss two, and they punish. What once seemed like choice slides into requirement, and requirement soon hardens into law. Jung warned that anything we grant mysterious power will demand worship. The bottle begins to set the clock. 5 o'clock signals not the end of labor, but the opening of the temple. The phone buzz becomes a sacred bell. Your pulse quickens before you even swipe. You are no longer chasing a moment of calm. You are obeying a schedule written by your craving. Friends notice your eyes drift past them toward an unseen altar. They call your name twice before it lands. Money joins the ritual next. At first, you justify the cost, a reward, a treat, an investment in relaxation. Soon the math stops making sense. You hide bank statements, borrow against the future, pawn a gift you once swore you would keep forever. The substance, still masquerading as comfort, now bleeds your resources the way it already bleeds your time. You promise yourself you'll fix the finances later, once the pressure eases. But the pressure never eases, because the ritual is both fire and fuel. Isolation follows money. It begins subtly. You skip a family dinner to rest, leave a message on read because it feels heavy to reply. The circle of people who know the real you shrinks, and the circle of those who know the ritual grows. Dealers learn your schedule. Algorithms predict your impulses. Bartenders pour before you ask. They see the version of you that no one else has met, and a dangerous intimacy forms, one built not on trust, but on transaction. The more they know, the less you want old friends to see. With isolation comes secrecy, and secrecy breeds lies. You hide bottles in laundry baskets, clear browser histories twice, invent meetings so you can disappear into your car for an hour. Each lie feels small, but together they weave a net you can't untangle without confessing everything. Shame multiplies, and shame is the ritual's favorite disciple. The heavier it grows, the more you need the very substance that caused it. A perfect loop. Pain demands relief. Relief deepens pain. Somewhere inside, your better judgment still kicks at the door. You hear its muffled protests and label them stress, exhaustion, just a rough patch. Yet each morning the mirror looks less like you. Eyes dull, skin sallow, voice flat. These are warnings, but the ritual has taught you a brutal logic. If one dose no longer brings calm, the answer is not less, it is more. Quantity replaces quality. Desperation replaces choice. Then come the moments you swore would never happen. You break a promise to your child, miss a deadline that matters, wake in a place you don't remember entering. Panic flares, but even panic is swallowed by routine. You patch the damage, swear again that this was the last time, and the ritual nods knowingly, as if it too believes you, though both of you know it is a lie. At this point, outsiders judge what they can see. Empty bottles in the bin, overdraft notices in the mail, relationships shattered like glass. Jung, however, looked for what they could not see. The ritual's true purpose. He knew the addict is not enslaved by pleasure, but by structure. In a chaotic world, the ritual delivers predictability, a clockwork certainty that never fails, until it destroys everything else. Here lies the terrible irony. The brain clings to a pattern that is killing the body because the soul still has not found a safer rhythm. Until a new pattern, rooted in meaning, replaces the old, the ritual will reign. Force can break it for a day, a week, a month, but it returns because nature hates a vacuum, and the human heart hates an empty calendar. So the question shifts. How do you supply a rhythm stronger than addiction's drum? How do you face the chaos beneath the ritual without letting it drown you? The answer waits in the deepest chamber of the psyche, where the shadow keeps the truths you buried long ago. Opening that door is terrifying, but it is also the first real choice you have made in years. And that is where we turn next. Open the door and the room is darker than you imagined. This is the chamber Jung called the shadow, the collection of feelings, memories, and instincts you hid to stay likable, employable, polite, anger you were punished for, Grief you were told was weakness, desires labeled shameful. All of them live here, alive and impatient. You exiled them to keep the peace, but exile never kills what is true. It only teaches it to speak in code. Addiction is that code, a secret language the shadow uses to say, I am still here. Picture your psyche as a house where the hallway lights never switch off. You keep your accomplishments there, your social smile, your carefully ironed self-story. Down a staircase sits a locked door. Behind it, a younger version of you clutches every feeling the hallway cannot bear. Each night, when the lights dim, that child pounds on the wood. You panic at the noise and reach for a drink, a pill, a screen, any tool that muffles the sound. The pounding dulls but never stops, because the child will not disappear until you open the door and listen. Most recovery advice tells you to strengthen the hallway, replace bad habits with good ones, repeat affirmations, stay positive. Jung warned that stronger hallways make louder basements. The cure is not to silence the child, but to shine a light on what frightens you. Step into the room with curiosity, not judgment, and ask each exiled part why it is there. Anger might say it only ever wanted to protect you. Grief might reveal the love buried beneath its tears. Even shame, when allowed to speak, turns out to be a compass pointing toward authenticity. Listening hurts, but it hurts clean. Tears come without the fog of chemicals, trembling arrives without the dull edge of denial, and each wave of honest feeling leaves you lighter. You discover suffering was never the enemy. Unmetabolized suffering was. Pain, when faced, moves. Anger, when voiced, cools. Shame, when spoken, shrinks in daylight. One by one, the ghosts step back, not defeated but integrated, and the room that felt haunted becomes simply lived in. This shift changes desire itself. The drink loses its glamour because the silence you pursued in the bottle now lives in honest tears, in a scream set free, in a conversation where you confess what once felt unspeakable. Relief arrives with no hangover attached, no guilt in voice at dawn. For the first time you taste peace that doesn't punish you for needing it. Opening the basement door is terrifying precisely because it ends the lie of powerlessness. As long as the substance rules, you can blame it for every dream deferred. Once the shadow steps into daylight, responsibility returns to its rightful owner. This is not a sentence. It is your freedom. You were never incapable, only divided. A reunited self does not need escape, it needs expression. Do not expect a Hollywood breakthrough. Integration is slow, messy, often boring. Some mornings you feel raw joy like sunlight on skin newly freed from bandages. Some nights the old craving taps your shoulder and whispers promises. When it does, meet it as you met the shadow. Ask what pain you are dodging, listen without flinching, and the craving will fade like smoke when a window opens. With each honest visit downstairs, the gap between urge and calm shortens. The shadow shifts from saboteur to guide, pointing out every place you still fake serenity. Follow its directions and you build rituals that do what the addiction only pretended to do: soothe, ground, connect. Breathwork at dawn, writing truths on paper, walking beneath unfiltered sky, ordinary acts that anchor you when the night tests your strength. The real victory is subtle. The substance no longer commands your calendar. It is an echo already fading. Now, with the shadow as an ally, you stand on the edge of the deepest descent. The place rock bottom becomes a doorway instead of a tomb. That is our next step. Rock bottom arrives disguised as disaster. A job lost, a partner gone, a police light in the rearview mirror. Outsiders gasp, he's ruined. What they miss is that rock bottom is not a finish line. It is the first honest floor your life has touched in years. When excuses, rituals, and half-truths collapse, only gravity and silence remain, and both are sacred. In that silence, a stark question rises. If nothing I built could hold me, what is worth rebuilding? Your bruised ego scrambles to bargain. One more week, one smaller dose, one fresh lie, but the bargains fail. Language is stripped of its tricks. The body is too tired for pretense. The mind is too raw for denial. All that endures is the pulse of something ancient, the will to live whole or not at all. Jung called this a symbolic death, and every myth agrees. The hero must descend into the underworld before he can rise. For the addict, that underworld is the clear sight that the substance was never savior, only mask. Without it, you stand naked before memories the high kept locked away. The breakup never grieved, the rage swallowed at 12, the terror that you are unlovable if anyone sees the real you. They surround you now like ghosts, yet notice. None attack. They wait to be acknowledged, murmuring, "We carried your truth. You ran from ours." Acknowledging them hurts, but it hurts clean. Tears flow without chemical fog, trembling arrives without the dull edge of the denial, and each honest wave leaves you lighter. Suffering was never the enemy. Unmetabolized suffering was. Grief felt moves, anger voiced cools, shame spoken shrinks. One by one the ghosts step back, not defeated but integrated, and the pit that felt like a grave becomes a chamber of birth. Yet rock bottom demands payment. The life you led before cannot continue. Some friends drift because your wholeness reveals their fractures. Some routines crumble because they were scaffolding for a lie. There is grief in this shedding, but also space. Space where ritual can bloom in daylight. Morning light becomes promise, not threat. A walk without headphones feels like meeting the world for the first time. Silence, once feared, becomes shelter. Change is quiet from the outside. You fold laundry, pay bills, breathe through cravings that still flicker like distant thunder. Each ordinary act without the substance engraves new code in your nervous system. I can live without the mask. Day by day the code grows, and the old program crashes more softly each time it tries to reboot. Rock bottom, then, was never a pit. It was a foundation. The climb is not a frantic return to who you were. It is a slow construction of someone you have never met. A self large enough to hold both hallway light and basement shadow without splitting apart. As this larger self takes shape, the craving loses command. It may whisper, but it no longer dictates, because you have heard a truer voice. And once heard, it cannot be forgotten. That larger self is what we integrate next. Step out of rock bottom and, for a moment, everything feels too quiet. The phone is silent, the bottle is capped, the old excuses lie in pieces. What's left is space, the very thing you once feared. Into that space walks every feeling you tried to drown. Anger, grief, shame, longing. They arrive not as enemies but as exiles asking for a home. Start with anger. It shakes your ribs and heats your face, but under the fire lives fierce protection. It's the part of you that says my time and body are worth defending. Give it a task. Guard your boundaries instead of burning bridges. Meet grief next. It rolls in like heavy weather, making it hard to breathe. Let the tears fall. When grief empties, it leaves fertile ground where empathy can grow. The pain you survived becomes the doorway through which you can comfort others. Now turn to shame, the heaviest guest. It whispers you're broken beyond repair. Hold that whisper to the light and ask what truth it hides. Often it points to your deepest value, the wish to live honest, unmasked. Thank shame for the signal, then guide it to a quieter seat it no longer needs to drive. Integration means each of these once banished parts takes a rightful place at the table. None dominate, none disappear. Together they form a compass more reliable than any substance. Craving still knocks, but the household is no longer divided. Someone always answers the door. Ritual seals the unity. Simple, steady acts replace the old cycle. 10 slow breaths at dawn, pen meeting paper before screens, feet touching grass at dusk. These habits look small, yet they wire your nervous system for presence. The very presence addiction mimicked and then stole. Community multiplies the effect. Share your story in a circle that listens without fixing, and you'll hear your shadow echoed in other voices. Isolation shrinks, courage expands. What once felt like a private curse reveals itself as common ground, a place where broken hearts trade wisdom instead of judgment. Expect setbacks. They are signals, not verdicts. When the urge surges, pause and ask, which part of me is unattended? Listen, respond, and the storm passes faster each time. Relapse becomes feedback, a teacher pointing to work still unfinished, not a hammer ending progress. As weeks fold into months, purpose stirs. The energy addiction once swallowed wakes up hungry for direction, toward art, service, honest work, anything that turns private healing into shared light. This is the gold Jung promised. Creativity smelted in darkness, now strong enough to build something that lasts. Integration won't grant perfection, it grants wholeness. You still feel, stumble, learn. But you no longer split into hallway and basement. Light reaches every room, and darkness keeps its wisdom without stealing the day. With that unity intact, the next step calls, turning inner reconciliation into service that mends more than just one life. Service is not sainthood. It is recycling. You take the wreckage of your old life, every sleepless night, every shattered promise, and break it into usable parts. Shame transforms into empathy. You recognize the look in another person's eyes before they speak. Regret turns to wisdom. You know every shortcut that circles back to hell. Even the months you called wasted gain value. They are map points you hand to anyone who fears their detour ends the journey. Purpose grows best in small, ordinary acts. You drive someone to their first therapy session. You offer coffee instead of judgment when a neighbor admits they slipped. You stack chairs after a meeting, send a 2 a.m. text because you remember how loud the silence gets. No headlines follow, yet each gesture widens the circle, private survival into shared strength. Jung wrote that the healed wound becomes a guiding scar, pointing both you and others toward wholeness. That scar never fades. It throbs when storms roll in, warning you that another soul is drowning nearby. You learn to trust the signal. You speak even when your voice shakes, remembering the day someone else's shaking voice kept you alive. Purpose also protects. The bottle may still whisper on rough nights, but its spell shatters against the faces you now serve. You cannot vanish into numbness, knowing a newcomer is waiting for your story at dawn. Responsibility, once a crushing weight, becomes armor, light enough to carry, strong enough to deflect old lies. As service deepens, the label addict dissolves. You see humanity in shades, not categories. The executive pacing outside a bar, the teenager hiding vape cartridges, the elder hoarding painkillers, all pilgrims on the same rough road. You greet them not as problems to fix, but as future guides in disguise. Then comes the quiet surprise of joy, not the frantic spike you once chased, but a steady hum filling moments you used to overlook. Folding laundry while music plays, laughing until your ribs ache, watching dawn stain the sky a color no camera can hold. Each scene feels like a small miracle. Addiction stole more than health. It stole wonder. Service gives it back. Thus the journey that began with a shattered soul spirals outward into widening circles of meaning. You are not just sober, you are useful. Not merely healed, but healing. Your story, once a secret, becomes medicine passed hand to hand across rooms, streets, and years you may never see. This is the payoff Jung hinted at, a life that no longer needs escape because it is woven with purpose, connection, and a humble awe at being alive. You asked why a man can hate the bottle and still drink, why a woman deletes the app and still scrolls. Now you know. Addiction isn't a love affair with poison. It is a search for wholeness wearing the wrong disguise. We have followed that search from the first silent hunger, through the siren of relief, the prison of ritual, the shadow's locked room, the saving descent of rock bottom, and the slow gold of integration and service. The journey ends with a single daily choice. Will I remain awake to my soul or drift back to sleep? The world will tug you to forget. Algorithms promising calm, old habits offering just one, your own mind whispering that growth was a dream. When that tug comes, pause. Feel the ground under your feet, the breath in your lungs, the pulse that proves you're still here. Remember the guiding scar on your heart and the people now walking beside you. You are no longer the person who needed escape to survive. You are the one who learned to stay. Staying doesn't make life easy, it makes you real. You meet storms with both hands free, treat pain as messenger instead of master, and let silence become doorway rather than threat. Joy returns in ordinary moments. Folding laundry to music, laughing until your ribs ache, watching dawn paint a color no camera can hold. So share your story. Tell a friend, write a post, start a circle, or whisper the truth aloud until your own ears believe it. Each time you name the path, you widen it for the next traveler. And if you need a compass, let it be this. Stay awake, remain honest, and keep human. The bottle, the pill, the glowing screen were never strong enough to hold the real you. Now that you've met that person, never let them go.